Still remember the day we declared humanity broken. It was cycle 947 of the Galactic Standard Year, and I, Venik Thross, stood before the High Council of the Karuvian Empire with what I believed to be irrefutable evidence. My scales shimmered with pride as I activated the holographic display showing scan after scan of human neural patterns, hormone fluctuations, and behavioral responses. "Observe," I announced, my voice carrying across the vaulted chamber. Their cerebral cortex floods with chemicals at the slightest provocation. Joy, anger, sadness, fear. They experience all of these within mere moments of each other. Their decision-making processes are compromised by these feelings. Council member Draxus, a towering figure from the silicon-based Morvith species, leaned forward. "And your assessment, researcher Thross?" "Humans are emotionally weak," I declared without hesitation. "They cry when sad, laugh when nervous, freeze when frightened. They make choices based on attachment rather than logic. They form bonds that cause them pain. They are, quite frankly, the most unstable sentient species we have encountered. Exploiting this weakness will make their integration into the Empire trivial." The Council murmured their agreement. How could they not? I had spent 3 standard years studying these peculiar bipeds from a distance, cataloging every tear, every outburst, every irrational choice made in the name of love or loyalty or hope. Pathetic concepts, really. We were so certain, so absolutely, devastatingly certain. The invasion fleet arrived at Earth 6 cycles later. 300 warships, each carrying 1,000 soldiers. We did not expect resistance.
Why would we?
Our intelligence suggested humans spent more time arguing among themselves than preparing for external threats. They created art about war, but seemed reluctant to actually wage it. They wrote songs about peace while their planet remained fractured into competing nations. Weakness, all of it. I volunteered to accompany the occupation force, eager to document humanity's swift surrender. My supervisor, Kelran Vos, tried to dissuade me. "Thross, perhaps observation from orbit would be more appropriate," he suggested, his sensory tendrils twitching with what I now recognize as concern. "Nonsense," I replied. "I want to see their emotional collapse firsthand. It will be the crowning achievement of my research." How remarkably stupid I was. The first landing parties touched down simultaneously across their major population centers: New York, London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. I was assigned to the North American continent, specifically a city called Denver. Our tactical computers had identified it as a strategic location with minimal military presence. An easy target. The initial hours went exactly as predicted. Humans fled before our advance. Their police forces fired primitive projectile weapons that barely scratched our armor. Their news broadcasts showed panicking crowds and government officials stammering through speeches. I recorded everything, noting each tear-streaked face and trembling voice. Subject exhibits elevated heart rate and excessive perspiration. I dictated into my recorder. Classic fear response. Subject 2 displays uncontrolled crying. Subject 3 has apparently fainted. Emotional instability confirmed. But then something shifted. Something we had not anticipated, could not have anticipated. A human female, perhaps 30 rotations old, stepped into the street as our column advanced. She wore simple clothing and carried no weapons. Her face was wet with tears, her hands shaking. Every scanner confirmed she was terrified. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Please don't hurt my daughter. She is only 6 years old. Take me instead. Do whatever you want to me. Just let her live." I expected her to collapse, or to break completely. Instead, she spread her arms wide and stood directly in the path of our lead vehicle. The driver, a seasoned warrior named Grauk, hesitated. "Move her," commanded our unit leader, Captain Thex. Grauk activated the vehicle's push field, a non-lethal force designed to clear obstacles. The woman flew backward, struck the pavement hard. I heard bones break. Her pain receptors must have been screaming. She got back up. Blood ran from her mouth and nose. One arm hung at an unnatural angle, but she returned to her position, blocking our path. "You will have to kill me," she said, through broken teeth. "I will not move. I will not let you pass while my child lives." Behind me, I heard Kelran's voice over the communication link.
"Thross, are you seeing this?"
"Something is wrong with our projections. An anomaly," I assured him. "One irrational individual does not disprove the overall pattern." Except it was not one. Within the hour, Hundreds of humans had formed a living barrier between our forces and the residential sectors. They were crying, yes. Shaking, yes. Clearly terrified, but not one of them moved. They sang songs. They held hands. Some prayed to their various deities. And they did not run. Captain Thex made the call. Lethal force authorized. Clear the obstruction. The screams still haunt me. Not because they were loud or particularly disturbing by objective standards, but because they did not do what screams are supposed to do. They did not signal surrender. They did not break the formation. For every human that fell, 2 more took their place. A male human, elderly and frail, dragged himself forward despite having no legs below the knees. "My grandson is in there," he gasped. "You want him? You go through me." A group of adolescents linked arms across a bridge, chanting something in their local language. When our translator parsed it, the words made no tactical sense. "We shall overcome." Overcome what? They had no weapons, no armor, no chance. But they did not move. By nightfall, our advance had stalled completely. Not because of military resistance, but because humans kept throwing their fragile bodies in front of our machines. Command was furious. This was supposed to be a simple occupation, not a grinding war of attrition against unarmed civilians. "They are emotionally compromised," I reported, trying to salvage my theory. "They are making completely irrational choices based on attachment and sentiment." "This proves my thesis." "Does it?" Kelran asked quietly. "Because from where I am observing, their emotions seem to be making them stronger, not weaker." I dismissed the comment. Emotions could not create strength. That was impossible.
Logical.
Emotions were a flaw, a bug in the biological programming, a weakness to be exploited. The second day brought the soldiers. Human military forces had been scattered initially, caught off guard by the simultaneous global assault, but they regrouped with startling speed. What they lacked in technology, they compensated for with something our tactical algorithms could not quantify. Fury. Not the blind rage of a wounded animal. This was calculated, focused, incandescent anger. They struck our supply lines. They sabotaged our equipment. They set traps that defied conventional military logic because they were willing to die setting them. One unit of human soldiers held a mountain pass for 18 hours against a force 10 times their size. Our commander sent a messenger under a parley flag, demanding surrender. The human commander, a scarred woman named Catherine Wells, sent back a message, "Come and take it." They killed her entire unit. Every single one of them fought until their bodies gave out. We lost 60 soldiers, taking that pass. 60 Karuvian warriors, killed by humans who should have broken, who should have fled, who should have valued their own survival over abstract concepts like duty and defiance. Emotional weakness, I repeated to anyone who would listen, but my voice had lost its conviction. The third day revealed the true depth of our miscalculation. Human resistance was not fragmenting under pressure, it was crystallizing, uniting, growing stronger. Their global communication networks, which we had failed to fully disable, spread stories. The woman in Denver who stood before our vehicles, the grandfather who dragged himself forward, the soldiers at the mountain pass, every act of defiance became a rallying cry. Humans across their planet began coordinating, all not through military command structures, which we could have disrupted, but through sheer emotional connection. They fought for each other, all for people they had never met, for abstract ideals like freedom and dignity. A young human male, barely out of adolescence, walked into one of our command posts wearing an explosive vest, not because he wanted to die, but because his entire family had been killed in the first bombardment. The pain in his eyes was oceanic, bottomless. "You taught me how to hate," he said. "Thank you for that lesson." The explosion destroyed half the building and killed 23 of our personnel. That was when I began to understand. All these humans were not ignoring their emotions. They were weaponizing them. Their fear became courage. Their sadness became determination. Their love became fury. Every feeling we had dismissed as weakness was actually fuel for a fire we could not extinguish. I watched a human medic run into active combat to save a wounded enemy combatant, one of our soldiers. She was shot 3 times in the process, but she kept dragging him to safety, kept applying pressure to his wounds, kept crying and cursing and refusing to let him die. Why? I asked her later, after our forces had retreated and she was recovering in a commandeered hospital. Why save your enemy? She looked at me with exhaustion in her eyes, because that's what being human means. We feel too much to turn it off, even when we should.
Even when it hurts.
Especially when it hurts. By the 5th day, the invasion was failing, not because humans had superior weapons or tactics, but because they simply would not break, could not break. Their emotions did not make them weak. Their emotions made them impossible to defeat, because defeat required accepting a reality they refused to accept. With Thimir Atherjod, Dafershin, with Inatras, we could destroy their cities. We could kill their people, but we could not make them surrender, could not make them stop fighting, could not make them stop caring. The High Council sent new orders: withdraw and reassess. I stood in the transport bay preparing to leave Earth's surface, and watched human civilians celebrate in the streets below, or they were still crying, still afraid, still in pain, but they were dancing and hugging and laughing through their tears. Thross, Kelran said over my shoulder, I think we need to reconsider our entire understanding of emotional capacity. I nodded slowly, my scales dull with something my species rarely experienced. Shame. We had called them weak because they felt everything, whole, but that capacity to feel, to connect, to care beyond reason or logic, had made them invincible. Whole, they loved hard enough to die. They hoped fiercely enough to fight impossible odds. They felt deeply enough to transform terror into triumph. A human child, no more than 8 years old, looked up at our departing ships. She waved, not in farewell but in defiance, a gesture that said, "We won. You are leaving because we refused to let you win." As our transport lifted away from the planet's surface, I began to compile a new report, one that would force the Council to confront an uncomfortable truth. We had not encountered humanity's weakness. We had encountered their greatest strength. And we had learned what happens when you mistake depth of feeling for fragility of spirit.
Okay.
What happens when you confuse tears with surrender. What happens when you fail to understand that emotions are not a liability to be exploited, but a power to be feared. The humans had taught us something profound, something that would reshape our entire understanding of sentient psychology. They had taught us regret. Because now we knew we should never have come to Earth. We should never have tested them. We should never have assumed that beings who could feel so much could be broken so easily. The greatest warriors are not those who feel nothing. They are those who feel everything and fight anyway. The journey back to the Karuvian homeworld took 43 cycles. 43 cycles of watching my colleagues avoid eye contact, of hearing whispered conversations stop when I entered a room, of knowing that every being on every ship in our retreating fleet was grappling with the same horrifying realization. We had been wrong. Catastrophically, utterly, shamefully wrong. I spent those cycles reviewing every piece of data I had collected, searching for the moment where my analysis had failed. The answer was both simple and devastating. I had never failed in my data collection. I had failed in my interpretation. I had mistaken the symptom for the disease, the expression for the cause, the shadow for the substance. Humans cried, so I called them weak. But I never asked why they cried or what they did after the tears stopped falling. When we arrived at Karovex Prime, I expected immediate summons before the High Council. Instead, I received something far worse. Silence. For 6 cycles, nobody contacted me. My reports went unacknowledged. My requests for debriefing were ignored. Finally, on the 7th cycle, Kelran Voss appeared at my quarters. "They are afraid to hear what you have to say," he told me, his sensory tendrils drooping with exhaustion. "The fleet commanders have already submitted their reports, casualty numbers, all resource expenditures, strategic failures, but nobody wants to address the fundamental question." "Which is?" I asked, though I already knew. "How did we lose to a species we deemed inferior?" Kelran settled into a resting position. "Thross, there are factions within the Council calling for a second invasion, a larger force. Total annihilation rather than occupation.
King.
They believe we simply underestimated human military capability. That is not what happened," I said flatly. "You know that. I know that. Anyone who was actually there knows that. Then you need to make them understand. Because if we go back to Earth with extermination as our goal, humans will not just defeat us again, they will make us pay in ways we cannot imagine." The Council finally summoned me on the 10th cycle. I entered the chamber where, less than a standard year ago, I had confidently declared humanity's emotional weakness. The irony was not lost on me. Council member Draxus regarded me with his multifaceted eyes. Researcher Thross, you have submitted a preliminary report that contradicts your previous findings. Explain. But I activated my display, but this time the images were different. Not neural scans and hormone charts, but recordings. Moments I had witnessed that defied simple scientific categorization. I told you humans were emotionally weak. I began. I was correct about the first part. Humans do experience emotions with an intensity that exceeds any other species we have encountered. Where I failed was in understanding what that intensity produces. I showed them the woman in Denver standing broken and bleeding in front of our vehicles. This human sustained multiple fractures, internal hemorrhaging, and severe trauma. Any rational being would have retreated to seek medical attention. She returned to her position 6 times before losing consciousness. Why? Because her offspring was behind the defense line. Her emotional attachment to that child overrode every survival instinct, every pain receptor, every logical calculation of odds. I showed them the elderly male with no legs, crawling toward our forces. This human had perhaps hours left to live even with medical intervention. He spent those hours as an obstacle, as a delay, as a message to his genetic descendant. His emotional investment in the next generation made him willing to die slowly and painfully rather than allow us easy passage. Tagonik Korch could have said, "Perheld the code fells of Narration." I showed them Catherine Wells and her unit at the mountain pass. Then these soldiers had multiple opportunities to retreat. They chose death, not because they were suicidal, but because their emotional connection to their nation, their people, their ideals, made survival without honor more frightening than death with purpose. The council member Vren, a gaseous being whose voice resonated through a mechanical translator, spoke. This does not explain our defeat. Bravery alone cannot stop a superior military force. You are correct. I agreed. Bravery alone cannot. But humans do not experience bravery alone. They experience it alongside love, anger, hope, grief, loyalty, and determination simultaneously. These emotions do not weaken each other. They amplify each other. They create a psychological state that our tactical computers literally cannot model because it defies rational behavior predictions. I pulled up combat footage from the Denver engagement. A human soldier pinned under debris, unable to move. His unit was retreating under heavy fire. Standard procedure would be to leave him. 1 casualty versus losing the entire squad. Instead, 3 humans ran back into the kill zone. 1 was shot immediately. The second took shrapnel to the chest but kept moving. The third reached the trapped soldier and began clearing debris while under continuous fire. Watch what happens next, I told the council. The trapped soldier, using his last functioning arm, pushed his rescuer away, gestured frantically for him to leave. The rescuer, bleeding from multiple wounds, refused. He stayed and kept digging until both of them were extracted by additional humans who also ran back into danger. 7 humans risked death to save 1, I said. From a tactical standpoint, this is insane. From an emotional standpoint, it is inevitable. I could not leave him, because doing so would cause them psychological anguish greater than the fear of death. Their emotional bonds are stronger than their survival instincts. Draxus shifted uncomfortably. Then they are controlled by their emotions. That is weakness, not strength. Is it? I challenged. We lost over 4,000 soldiers in the Earth campaign. Do you know how many humans died? Over 90,000. They lost 20 times our numbers and still forced our retreat. They absorbed losses that should have shattered their resistance, and instead used those losses as motivation to fight harder. Each death did not weaken them. It enraged them. It motivated them. It made them more dangerous. I showed them the suicide bomber. The young male with the oceanic eyes. This human lost everything he cared about in our initial bombardment. His emotional pain was so intense that he chose to transform it into a weapon. He walked calmly to his death, because his grief had become something we have no defense against. Purpose. The council chamber fell silent. I could see them struggling with concepts that did not fit into our understanding of psychology and warfare. There is more, I continued. The humans have global communication networks within hours of our invasion. They were sharing stories.
Yet.
Not tactical information, but emotional narratives. The woman who would not move, the grandfather who crawled, the soldiers who held the pass. These stories spread across their entire planet. They were not military briefings. They were emotional fuel. Humans who had never met began fighting for each other because they felt connected through shared stories of courage and sacrifice. I displayed social media feeds, news broadcasts, amateur videos recorded on personal devices, millions of humans, in hundreds of languages, united by the emotional impact of witnessing each other's defiance. In their largest population center, New York, we had captured several strategic buildings. A human civilian walked into our perimeter, playing a musical instrument, a trumpet. He was unarmed and clearly terrified, but he stood there and played their anthem. Other humans began gathering, singing along. Within an hour, thousands had assembled, all singing, all emotionally connected through music and shared identity. We dispersed them, Council Member Vren stated. We tried, I corrected. We used sound weapons, flash charges, push fields. They scattered temporarily, then reformed. We arrested the trumpet player. Another human brought a violin. We arrested her. Someone brought drums. This continued for 3 days until we abandoned those positions because we could not operate while surrounded by emotional demonstrations that our soldiers found psychologically destabilizing. Kelran spoke up from the observer section. With respect, Council members, I believe what Thross is trying to explain is that human emotions are not a vulnerability to exploit. They are a force multiplier. We cannot counter. Elaborate, Draxus commanded. Our soldiers are trained to suppress emotional responses during combat, Kelran explained. This makes us efficient and predictable. Humans do the opposite. They embrace their emotions and channel them. Fear becomes adrenaline. Anger becomes aggression. Love becomes protective fury. They are unpredictable because they are operating on psychological principles we do not possess. Dauda nodded and continued. There is another factor. Human emotional capacity includes something called empathy. The ability to feel what others feel. This creates tactical disadvantages, but strategic advantages. A human medic treated one of our wounded soldiers. She risked her life to save her enemy because her empathy would not allow her to watch a sentient being suffer, even one who had been trying to kill her moments before. That is weakness, Vren insisted. Is it? That wounded soldier was named Corvus Thren. After the human medic saved his life, he refused to engage in further combat operations against humans. He said he could not kill beings capable of such compassion. 17 other soldiers in his unit made the same choice. We had to send them back to Karuvik's Prime for psychological conditioning. The human medic weaponized her empathy. She turned our soldiers against us without firing a shot. The council chamber erupted in agitated discussion. I waited for silence to return. There is one final thing you need to understand, I said quietly. Humans have a concept they call spite. When they are hurt, humiliated, or threatened, they will endure tremendous suffering, simply to deny their enemy satisfaction. During our occupation of their city called Chicago, we established a curfew. Humans were ordered to remain indoors after dark or face lethal consequences. Do you know what happened? I did not wait for a response. Thousands of humans went outside after curfew. They held hands in public squares, sang songs, played games, and dared us to kill them. They knew we would. They did not care. Their emotional need to demonstrate defiance overrode their survival instinct. We could have slaughtered them all, but then we would have been occupying a city of corpses. We could have ignored them, but then our authority meant nothing. Either way, they won. I deactivated the display and faced the council directly. You are considering a second invasion with extermination as the objective. I am here to tell you that this will fail, not because humans have superior technology or tactics, but because they have something we cannot defeat. They have emotional resilience, the capacity to suffer enormously and emerge angrier, more determined, more unified than before. Every attack will make them stronger. Every casualty will fuel their resistance. Every atrocity will be remembered and used as motivation for revenge. Then what do you suggest? Draxus asked. We cannot allow this defeat to stand unpunished. Punishment? I felt something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. Council member, we are the ones who should fear punishment. Do you know what humans do when they are truly angry? When they unify around a common enemy? They do not forget. They do not forgive. They wait, they prepare, and they come for you. And they will keep coming until either you are destroyed, or they are. There is no middle ground with humans, because their emotions do not permit compromise when they feel wronged. I pulled up one final image. A photograph taken on the last day of our occupation, a human child, perhaps 10 years old, standing in the rubble of what had been her home. She was not crying. She was not afraid. She was staring directly at our surveillance drone with an expression I had learned to recognize. Determination. Written on a piece of debris in front of her was a message in their English language. We will remember. That child will grow up, I said softly. She will tell her children and grandchildren about what we did. Human memory, fueled by emotional trauma, lasts for generations. They still fight wars over grievances centuries old. They still hate enemies their ancestors faced. If we return to Earth with extermination as our goal, we will not just face current humans, we will create a blood debt that their species will pursue across the galaxy for as long as they exist. The council chamber fell into heavy silence. Finally, Draxus spoke. Are you suggesting we apologize, make reparations? I am suggesting we leave them alone, I replied. Completely, permanently, we withdraw from their system. We forbid any Karuvian contact with Earth, and we hope they are willing to let us retreat with our dignity minimally intact. Because the alternative is that humans learn to build spacecraft that can reach our worlds, and when they do, they will remember. They will remember every civilian we killed, every city we damaged, every child we orphaned, and they will come here with all the fury and determination and love and anger and spite that makes them human, and we will lose, because we cannot match that intensity of feeling. But Council Member Vren made a sound of disbelief. One species? You believe one emotionally unstable species could threaten the entire Karuvian Empire? I thought about the woman with broken bones standing in front of our vehicles, the grandfather crawling with no legs, the soldiers at the mountain pass, the medic running into fire, the child with the trumpet, the message in the rubble. Yes, I said simply. I believe that with absolute certainty, humans are dangerous precisely because they feel too much. That capacity for emotion makes them capable of heroism and atrocity in equal measure. They will endure anything, sacrifice anything, become anything necessary to protect what they love or avenge what they have lost. We made them feel loss. We made them feel anger. We made them feel the need for revenge. The only question now is whether we give them the opportunity to act on those feelings or whether we retreat and pray they are satisfied with our surrender. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the decision was unanimous. Complete withdrawal from the Sol system. No contact, no surveillance, no exceptions. The official record would state that Earth was deemed strategically insignificant, but everyone who had been there knew the truth. We had encountered a species whose emotions made them invincible, halls whose tears were preludes to fury, halls whose love was stronger than our hate, whose humanity, in all its messy, irrational, beautiful intensity, was something we could neither understand nor defeat. As I left the council chamber, Kelran walked beside me. Do you think they will come after us anyway? He asked. I considered the question carefully. I think humans are capable of forgiveness. I also think they are capable of very long grudges. It will depend on what they decide their emotions tell them to do. And that, my friend, is something our most advanced computers could never predict. We reached the observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 40 light-years away, humans were rebuilding their cities and burying their dead and telling stories about the aliens who came and learned what humanity really meant. I had gone to Earth believing emotions were weakness. I returned knowing they were the most powerful force in the universe. More lasting than our technology, more dangerous than our armies. We had set out to conquer the emotionally weak. Instead, we had discovered what true strength looked like, and we had learned what it meant to feel regret. The council had voted for withdrawal, but I knew the real reason we were leaving Earth alone. It was not strategy or resource allocation or tactical considerations. It was fear. We were afraid of a species that could cry and fight simultaneously, that could love so fiercely they would die for strangers, that could hurt so deeply they would transform pain into purpose. We were afraid because we finally understood what I should have realized from the beginning. The most dangerous beings in the universe are not those who feel nothing. They are those who feel everything. And humanity feels everything. That was the day the Karuvian Empire learned its most important lesson. Some species cannot be conquered because conquest requires breaking their will. And you cannot break what bends and stretches and absorbs damage and somehow emerges stronger than before. Human emotions were not their weakness. They were their superpower, and we had made the mistake of making them angry. The smartest thing we ever did was leave before they decided to show us just how dangerous angry humans could be.